We pull out the latches right now. So now
open the hood.
God,
Open the hood.
that's good.
I'm going to turn the wheel out so you can see.
Water pump.
Okay, so there's our coolant reservoir. So make sure it's between minimum and maximum. Not full completely to the top. Here's our dipstick. We would take it out, wipe it off, put it back in, pull it out and see where it's at. If it's down to the minimum or lower, I'll add a gallon. Here is my water pump right here. The water pump on this truck is a belt-driven water pump.
Is that because the belt is next to it?
And I would check the belt that it's not frayed, it's not cut, it's not cracked or broken. No more than 3/4 inch play in the longest part of the belt. Check it's not leaking coolant. It's pretty hard to see, but down there is my compressor. See the top of it?
Yeah.
There's kind of a red, and it's right there.
Okay.
That's the compressor.
त्यो पाइप जोडिएको छ नि सोल्टी त्यो कम्प्रेसर यहाँ देखाउँछु म compressor.
So this right here is the compressor. That's the top of it. Okay, it's a gear-driven compressor. I'm checking that it's not leaking coolant or leaking oil, because the engine coolant goes through it and so does the engine oil. Okay, it's securely mounted, it's not leaking, and it's a gear-driven compressor. Down below here on the compressor, you see where this hose goes. Here's our reservoir, power steering reservoir. Here's our power steering gearbox. So if I follow the hoses, down here is my power steering pump.
Power steering pump.
Okay, it is gear driven also. I'm checking that it's not leaking and it's securely mounted, okay? Then here's my power steering reservoir. I'm checking that the oil is up to the proper level in it. Checking it's securely mounted, it's not leaking. I'm checking that my hoses, none of my hoses are damaged or cut or leaking. All the clamps are present and tight. They're not so tight they're cutting the hose apart. So I would check all of my hoses throughout the engine compartment for that. Okay, they're not damaged, they're not cut, they're not leaking. Clamps are all present and tight, but not so tight they're cutting the hose apart. Here is my power steering gearbox. I'm checking that it's securely mounted. All these bolts are tight. Nothing's broken or loose. I'm checking it's not dripping oil on the ground, leaking. This is my steering shaft. I'm checking there's no excessive play in that. There's no play in my U-joints, but the U-joints turn freely. Look to be lubricated properly.
I don't understand the meaning of play. Is that like...
So I can't move it back and forth here.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right. Then here's my Pitman arm. I'm checking my Pitman arm is tight on this shaft. So this is a big heavy bolt that tightens. So I can't get any movement in there. I don't have rust tracking, rust dust down there. This is my drag link. I'm checking that isn't broken or damaged. I'm checking that both of these ends, I can't move it back and forth or up and down. I could turn it, but I can't move it back and forth or up or down. And it's a little hard to see, but there's a rubber grommet or boot on each end. I'm checking those aren't torn or missing. It's fastened with a castle nut. Again, it's a little dirty. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a castle nut. So here's my cotter pin that goes through the castle nut. I want to make sure that the castle nuts always have a cotter pin in it, and then there's one here too. You can see the cotter pin a little easier on this one. Okay, so those are good and locked. And this would be my upper steering arm right here. Now for the test, you don't have to mention it. You can, once you get here, that's far enough. But I want you guys to know, here's my upper steering arm. In this case, that is bolted here, so I want to make sure those bolts are good and tight. Down here is my lower steering arm. It's kind of underneath here. See it?
Yeah, I see that.
And that's bolted on there too. Make sure that's tight. It's not cracked or damaged. Then this is my tie rod. Okay, that ties this wheel to the other wheel, so they both turn the same. The tie rod is just like the drag link. No play, side to side or up and down. Has those rubber boots or grommets around it. They're not torn or missing. It's also fastened with a castle nut. So the castle nut's tight and cotter pins are in place. Okay? So that's my steering. Now I've got a couple more items on the motor to talk about. I guess mainly one, because we covered the water pump, we covered the compressor, and we covered the power steering pump. On the other side is my alternator. So let's go look over there. Watch your head.
Water pump.
Here is my alternator. You can tell by the little fan looking pulley on it. And it's got electrical connections to it. So I'm checking that that's securely mounted. I'm checking that my wires aren't burned or frayed or loose. It is also a belt-driven compressor. So I'm checking no more than 3/4 inch play in the longest section of the belt. And the belts aren't separating, cracking, coming apart, fraying. Okay? Now, both of the automatics, with their blue and yellow, the motors are the same. So everything's in the same place. The yellow one, the Volvo that we were just in, the alternator is on the other side, and the water pump is over in this area. Okay? So there's a little bit of difference there. The compressor is about the same area as this one, but it's just a little bit higher. And those are hoses. Those are your air conditioning lines. Oops, you okay? This is actually the air conditioning compressor. So you don't have to talk about that for the test, because they don't care. The state doesn't care if the air conditioning works or not. You do, but they don't.
We do.
Okay, so, and of course these hoses we would check the same as all the others. Okay, now let's go back to this side. Okay, we covered our steering. Now we'll go to our suspension. Here is my spring hanger on the front. Back here is my spring hanger on the back. I'm checking those are securely mounted. They're not cracked, broken, or loose. These are my shackles. Checking they're not damaged. They're parallel with each other. Checking that these pins appear to be centered in the holes they go through. Same thing up here, centered in the eyes of the spring there. This is my leaf springs.
Leaf spring.
Leaf springs, I don't see any cracked or broken or missing leaves. No leaves that are not parallel with each other. One sticking out like that, that's a broken one. Here's my U-bolts. The U-bolts hold the spring to the axle, so I'm checking that all the nuts are present on the bottom and everything's tight. This isn't loose. Okay, so once again, spring mounts or hangers, leaf springs, U-bolts, shock absorbers right here. No oil running down the lower portion of the shock because it's leaking. And I'm checking the top and the bottom that the bushings are tight, the nuts are tight. I can't move them on the lower or the upper portion of it. Okay, so that would be my suspension. Now we'll go to brakes. Here's my airline for my brakes. So I'm checking that this airline is not cut or damaged. It's not rubbing on anything. It's rubbing a flat spot in it. It's not leaking anywhere. And that goes to the brake chamber. My brake chamber isn't bent or crushed or damaged. It's not leaking air. It's securely mounted. If it has a clamp around it, the clamp is good and tight. Now this one doesn't have a clamp. This one is factory crimped. So there's no clamp to check here. Coming out of the brake chamber is my push rod right there and my clevis. Clevis goes around the slack adjuster. So all of this is the slack adjuster. I'm checking that my pins are present through the slack adjuster and the clevis. And there's some kind of a locking pin on it so it can't come out. You can see those. Then I would pull on it. Make sure I can't pull this out more than an inch. Okay. So that means my brakes are adjusted okay. All right. Now, all you have to do is describe this. You don't actually have to pull on it. Okay. But in real life, you got to pull on them to check them.
Right.
Okay. Then in here is my brake linings.
Brake landings. Brake landings.
The brake pad?
Brake pad, right. Can you see them?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Okay.
It's over there.
Yep, okay. So those are not dangerously thin. They're not cracked or broken, missing. Okay, then there's a brake drum, is what it pushes against. The brake drum isn't cracked or broken. There's no holes in the drum. That would be a piece broken out of it. Okay, question? No. Okay.
I just was surprised. So it could be broken.
It can. If it cracks and stays that way long enough, it can go around and a piece can break out.
I just don't understand. This brake drum attached to what, to rim or to axle?
It's attached right in here is our brake drum. See? So it slides on all your bolts, and the wheel and the lug nuts hold it on. This right here is the hub. Okay, and the brake drum goes on the hub. So these studs are in the hub. The brake drum slides on the hub and over these studs. Then the wheel slides on, and the nuts hold all of that onto the hub. If you look upstairs in the classroom, in the back corner is a hub with no drum on it. You can see the studs, and it's actually it's actually one off of the trailer. But you'll see, then you can kind of see how it works. Okay, so brake drum again isn't cracked or broken. Now we're checking that we don't have any oil leaking out of the brake drum coming down the tire. That's an inner axle seal leak.
Interaxle seal.
Inner axle seal. Then I'm also checking that it's not leaking out here.
Outer axle seal.
That would be outer axle seal leak. And this has oil in it. I know that because it has a rubber button in the middle. Now it's dirty, so I can't see through, so I have to wipe this off to see the sight glass to check that the oil's up at the proper level. So I want to make sure the oil's the proper level. Now if this is a solid metal cap, it's a pack bearing, just like in your car. It's grease instead of oil. Okay? And they do have, some of them are grease, some of them are oil. Okay? Then we go to our tire. So a steer tire has a minimum of 4/32 tread depth. I'm checking also the condition of the tire, so I don't see bulges or bubbles in the sidewall or the tread or the inner sidewall. I'm checking that no wires or fabric are showing anywhere. I'm checking for deep rips or tears in the sidewall. where I see cords, or it's, you know, it looks that deep in there, the gash. Checking for fairly even tread wear. I'm checking I don't have tread coming off the tire. I'm going to check with a gauge that it's properly inflated, so should be 110 psi.
PSI. What gauge do we call that? Just a gauge, or?
You just call this is a valve stem.
Valve stem.
So you'd push the gauge on the valve stem to see how much air pressure, same as your car, you know.
Oh, okay.
Only your car is 30 to 40 pounds, these are 110.
110.
Okay, I'm checking that the tire is evenly seated around the bead of the rim. Looks the same all the way around. I'm checking the rim is not bent, cracked, broken. No welded repairs on the rim. I'm checking that all my lug nuts are present and tight. There's no indications of looseness, like rust, dust tracking out from it. That's a good indication they're loose. Or if the wheel has shiny metal on each side of all my lug nuts, or if I have a gap between the washer here and the wheel, a rim, that would be a loose one. Typical places for them to crack are from one lug nut to the other, or from a lug nut to a hole here. Okay, that would be my front.
The depth should be 430 seconds?
430 seconds. 430 seconds.
430.
Now, every other tire is 230 seconds.
230
but the
seconds.
steers have to be 430 seconds, minimum. They can't be less than that. Also, steer tires cannot be recaps.
No recaps.
They have to be new tires, or virgin tires.
Virgin tires. Same, both the sides maybe?
And they should be the same size and type. So if you see this number right here, it says 295 75 R225. The other tires, the number should be the same.
Same. Should be matched.
The 22.5 is rim diameter, and then the R means it's a radial, and then the other two numbers are talking about the height and the width of the tire.
Wow. It's a lot of information.
What's
That's
that?
good information.
Okay, something else you have to do with your walk on. Watch your head there. Watch your head.
I should take that.
Okay, you also have to talk about the lights. The lenses aren't cracked or broken or damaged, missing. Of course, the headlights are white. My turn signals and park lights here are amber. And I have my amber 3ID lights in the middle. That identifies it as a large vehicle. And then the two lights on either side, that shows about the width of it. Those are marker lights.
Marker lights.
Those are all amber, and they're just on when the lights are on. And of course, I'm checking the lenses aren't cracked, broken, or missing.
So those lights to be in amber color?
Amber color, This light is a marker light on this truck, and it's also a signal in the four-way. It's amber in color, and I don't want to see that it's cracked or broken or missing. Okay? Okay, so that would be Form A. If we had Form A, we'd have to go over all of that.
Form A. Okay.
Form A. You have four possibilities for a walk around. There's Form A, Form B, Form C, and full form. Full form means the whole truck.
Whole truck, okay.
Form A is everything from where the hood comes together with the tractor forward. So all your engine compartment and the front axle.
Everything we just talked about.
Everything we just talked about. Form B would be nothing that we just talked about.
Okay.
But from here, the rest of the tractor, everything else on the tractor.
Okay, not the trailer.
Not the trailer.
Okay.
Form C is the trailer.
Okay, Form C would be trailer, just the trailer.
Now, no matter what form you have, you always have all your connecting devices between the tractor and the trailer. You'll always have these, okay? So, tractor protection valve right here.
Tractor protection valve.
Okay? Tractor protection valve is securely mounted. It's not leaking or damaged. My hose connections to my tractor protection valve are not leaking.
Not leaking.
Now the hoses themselves are not damaged or leaking. My electrical cord is not damaged or frayed. I'm checking the electrical cord is completely in the junction box and my flapper is over it. See the lock there under the flapper? So it goes down, so if this is up above that, it could come out. So that flapper is what locks it from coming out. And same thing here. So if the spring here is broken, this kind is up, that can work its way out. This way it can't, because it hits that and it can't come any farther. Okay, so I've got to talk about both connections, those and these. So I'm checking that I can't just pop these loose easy, they're tied on there. I'm checking my electrical cord is all the way in the junction box and locked, and it's not damaged. I'm checking, I would check my Gladhand rubbers. So see, this one is kind of pushed down in there. It's getting ready to, now sometimes you'll see them stuck in like that, then they're getting hard. It's time to replace them, or if they've cut across here, it's time to replace it. This one is getting a little hard. It's about time to replace it. It's still sealing okay, but those are things you're checking. Okay, notice they're firm. Okay, I'm also checking that it looks like I have enough cord to be able to turn without pulling the hoses loose.
Yeah.
And I'm also checking that it's supported so it doesn't drag or catch on anything.
Here.
That's the mount in there that's loose. That would be something to probably, what's happened is this nut is rusted, should be a little tighter, and then it would hold it. Then on our fifth wheel, this is my apron.
Apron, the upper one is apron.
Or upper fifth wheel plate.
Upper fifth wheel.
I'm checking that it's not cracked or broken, damaged. This is my lower fifth wheel plate, the piece on the tractor. I'm checking that's not cracked or broken or damaged. I'm checking there's no gap between the two right there.
No gaps.
No gaps between the upper and lower fifth wheel plate. I'm checking that my release handle is all the way in the lock position. I'm checking that my pivot pin here is in place and something is there. I have some kind of a retaining device. In this case, this little plate that says joist on it is the retaining device. Here's the two screws that hold that there that keeps the pin in. Some of them have a bolt that sticks down in front of it. Some of them on the inside have a great big cotter pin. But you're checking that those are secure and can't come out.
Oh, okay, secure and not come out.
Then here is my A-frame.
A-frame. Looks like A.
Yep. I'm checking that's not cracked or broken or loose. Now I'm going to go over my platform. So all of this area is my platform. So I'm checking that my stops are in place here on the back and on the front. I'm checking that my slide rail here is securely fastened. It's not cracked or broken. And I'm checking any area here on my platform that nothing's cracked, broken, loose. I don't have any missing bolts. These are my locking pins right here. So there's a set of 3. I'm checking that those are fully engaged in the slots. Now to get credit for those, I also have to mention that I would check the distance between the back of the tractor and my landing gear and the cab and my front of my trailer, that there's enough room to make turns. Okay, so you have to mention that clearance to get credit for those pins. Okay, so locking pins are all in the lock position. Now here is my mounting bracket. My platform is bolted or can be welded also to my mounting bracket, but the mounting bracket can't be welded to the frame of the tractor. It has to be bolted. So I've got all these bolts And again, no missing bolts. Now here's empty holes, but there's no hole in the frame, so that's not a missing bolt.
That's
now,
not missing.
if I could see air through there, daylight through there, then I got a missing one, don't I?
Right. You do.
Okay. All right. Then I would look around the back here. I'd look in the fifth wheel, and I would check that my jaws are wrapped around the shank of the kingpin.
Right.
Okay.
Get a clear view from here. Okay, the locking jaws
Are around the shank of the kingpin. So there's a bar across there behind the kingpin, isn't there?
Yes.
Yep.
There's a bar.
That's your jaw. Okay, then you also have to mention that the kingpin, I checked the kingpin isn't bent or cracked or broken. Now, you can't really see the kingpin much because the jaws are around it. You'd actually check that before you hooked up to a trailer, but you have to mention it for the test. Okay?
Right.
Okay. All right. So those items that we just went over, oh, also with your airlines here, your airlines aren't damaged or leaked.
Airlines, these two are airlines. Not damaged, no leaks.
Okay, so those items we just went over, you'll have them on every test. Okay?
Awesome.
All right. Now we'll start up here with Form B. Okay, our mirrors are securely mounted. This is the one thing you talk about twice. You talk about them in the cab, and you talk about them out here too. Okay, so mirrors are securely mounted. They're not broken or damaged. If I have any wires out here, they're not frayed and they're secure. Check that my door opens and closes properly. My grab handles are secure. They'll hold 250 pounds. My rubber seal isn't damaged. And my door closes properly. My steps are securely mounted. They're not broken, damaged, missing. They'll support 450 pounds, so a big driver.
Yeah.
A big driver.
A heavy one.
Too many buffets. Okay, then we talk about our fuel tank. Okay, our cap is present and tight. It's not leaking. The tank itself isn't damaged or leaking. We'd have to look on this one from back. We'd look at our straps. There's straps that are holding the tank in the saddle there. I'm checking those are not broken or loose, damaged. And I'm checking that there's a rubber gasket between the metal and the aluminum.
There's a rubber gasket right here.
Okay. All right. So, and then of course, if you remember, you have your fuel gauge, so you've got some wires to the gauge there.
Fuel gauge. Stairs that holds 450. That's catwalk.